and generous introduction. And good evening, Mr. Sorensen, and thank you for being with us tonight. This is a unique and fascinating opportunity for us to hear the thoughts and recollections of President Kennedy's closest living advisor. And I'm going to ask some questions, and then we're going to open it up to the audience to ask you some questions after a while. And then I know you have an excerpt from your recent book, Counsel, A Life at the Edge of History, which came out, I believe, in May. We have a copy of it up here with us. And so we'll finish with your reading from your book. Let me start with the beginning of your relationship with JFK. I think we'd all like to know how you originally met President Kennedy and what were your first impressions of him.
After law school, I went to Washington because I thought I might find the kind of legal work there, public policy, national, international matters, that I probably would not find in my home city of Lincoln, Nebraska. After two early jobs, one for a federal agency, one for a temporary congressional committee, that temporary committee expired. I had to start looking for a job all over again because in 1952, President Eisenhower had been elected, the first Republican in 20 years. He requested a freeze on executive branch employment, so I could not return to my old job. The chairman of that temporary committee I was serving said, "Don't worry, there are some new senators, some of them come from the House, I worked with them. I'll recommend that they take a look at your availability." And he and his chief of staff sent letters to 3 new senators who had formerly been representatives who worked with Senator Douglas of Illinois, the chairman. Of those 3, one was Mike Mansfield from nearby Montana. One was Scoop Jackson, or Henry Jackson of Washington, also from the Northwest. And the other was John F. Kennedy of Massachusetts. I don't think, to my knowledge, they ever heard back from Mansfield. But both Jackson and Kennedy said yes, they would be glad to interview me. I had interviews with both. In Kennedy's case, he had been a congressman, and he had invited me to meet with him in his old House office building. But the newly elected congressman assigned to that office was moving in that same day. All was chaos and confusion inside. So he took 2 chairs and placed them in the doorway. We perched on those chairs and had about 5-minute interview. It wasn't time for a serious examination of my credentials, but I was impressed. Impressed, first of all, that he didn't try to impress me. Here he was, a millionaire, a war hero, a Harvard graduate. He had everything, and a newly elected member of the Senate. He didn't try to talk about that or impress me with how important he was. He didn't act in a pompous, self-important way as so many politicians do. He was just a good guy. I liked that, and it turned out for the next 11 years, he was a good guy.
Yeah, that's great, and it took you all the way ultimately to the White House. And when you went to the White House with JFK, you described your role there as special counsel to the president, and you indicate in your book that your role encompassed advising the president regarding policy and serving as a speechwriter. I was wondering, what was the relationship between speechwriting and policymaking when it came to domestic affairs?
In a way, I've been doing that during his 8 years as United States Senator. In the White House, it was even easier, except I had a lot more to do. But I was a policy advisor, and I would take part in the meetings on domestic policy where decisions were made. It was easy to watch the president make a decision. I could see what evidence impressed him. what arguments meant the most to him. I could see what his responses were. And then walk a few steps down to my office, not far from his, and put all that into a draft speech. Other presidents have had speech writing departments. The departments are usually not even in the White House. They're in the old executive office building across the street. They have 7 or 9 wordsmiths sitting there waiting for the phone to ring. The chief of staff calls up and says, the president would like a speech on Haiti. Who knows about Haiti? Who will write a speech for the president on Haiti? And someone will say, I will. That's someone they never have met or seen the president, much less have the slightest idea what his position is on Haiti. I couldn't do that, and I certainly wouldn't enjoy it compared to the relationship that I had with John Kennedy.
You knew the president's thoughts probably as well as anyone.
Yes, and when I went into the White House, I've been with him for 8 years.
Yeah. Were there, just one last question related to this. Were there some times where there were inconsistencies between speech writing and policy making?
No.
Okay. That must have made the job easier.
Well, I think I say in the book, and it's very immodest, but again, comparing myself with other speechwriters. I've known many presidential speechwriters. They have to submit their draft to the head of the communications department. I was the head of the communications department. Then they had to submit it to the chief of staff for ideas. I was the chief of staff for ideas. I only had to submit my drafts to one person, John F. Kennedy.
And you had 2 assistants, as I recall, when you were in the White House.
I had 2 deputies. It was called the Office of Special Counsel. They were actually lawyers practicing law while I was working on policy matters. And for the most part, they did not get involved with speech writing. Of course, John F. Kennedy did. Once in a while, we drew on the wonderful historian, Arthur Schlesinger, who was gifted. During the first year, Dick Goodwin, who had worked with me during the campaign, was in the White House and assisted me, but he then transferred over to the State Department and then the Peace Corps. So basically, my 2 assistants worked on appeals from independent boards and agencies and that sort of legal question. Much as I tried to get rid of the speechwriting job because the president kept piling more and more responsibilities on me, but he wouldn't let me give it up.
But as a result, you had this incredible opportunity to work with the president on a daily basis and to know what he was thinking, and as well to be his advisor or special counsel. During the time with President Kennedy in the White House, what action that you took or decision that you made do you believe had the greatest impact on the course of history?
I didn't make decisions. If you're a speechwriter, you always have to keep in mind you're just a speechwriter. You're not the president. You don't make decisions. You don't decide policy. The president does that. I had a background in civil rights that he did not. And perhaps my advice on that policy and the speeches that I drafted regarding that policy helped to influence him, as his brother Bobby, as Attorney General, was also influencing him, but influencing him even more was what was going on in our country. Civil rights became a burning issue. North, South, East, West. It became a moral issue. It became a legal issue. It was an issue that the President of the United States could not ignore. So I don't even take the credit for pushing him over that line. Events pushed him over that line.
Well, your book points out that you were active early in your life with civil rights. It's something that you believe in deeply and cared about.